There's a lot that goes into city development, with so many different influences affecting where things are built and why. Every individual area has very specific reasons for why it's built like it is, and there are so many stories throughout major American cities as to what those reasons are. New Orleans has about as intricate of a history as any city in the country, with an extremely unique geographic location. This has made for interesting areas and developments, like this group of interchanges on the east side of the city that seemingly lead to nothing. It's obvious there's an interesting reason for this, so today we're going to find out why. Before this video starts though, make sure you do subscribe to the channel. We're trying to grow and every subscriber really does help. So if you appreciate the content, just click the subscribe button below because it's super easy for you and actually means a lot to me. Thank you. So let's move ourselves down to New Orleans and start by giving a very quick overview of how the city works, because some of the people watching might not be familiar with the details that the city has to deal with. So the metropolitan area is located in southeastern Louisiana, mostly between Lake Pontchartrain and the Mississippi River. It's in a low-lying swampy region and measures usually from 10 feet to 3 feet above sea level. There are levees built around the entire city to hold back the water, the river, and lake, with the city being built as a sort of bowl with water on either side. Basically, New Orleans is in an extremely bad modern-day location, and without human intervention, the city would not exist. This makes for a lot of challenges in the development process, especially through the 20th century when the city was still growing and they were trying to figure out where to put things to keep the city safe. This brings us to the topic of today's video, these ghost interchanges. Located on the east side of the city, there are 3 exits along the main interstate I-10. These interchanges are located around 1.5 miles away from each other in the swampy landscape, away from the developed city. The first one, located farthest to the east, is abandoned, with the off-ramps closed off by metal gates. It's somewhat overgrown, but you can still find your way past it if you try really hard, with there still being obvious remnant of a road and a still functioning overpass. This one does have an overgrown road coming off of it that takes you north to the levee. The second one is the most overgrown, being basically an abandoned trail going into an impassable ramp and overpass. It's hard to even notice it's there unless you're looking for it, and it doesn't connect to anything. The third one is the only one possibly still in use, but you can tell it's in the same group as the 2 abandoned ones. New Orleans just managed to create a use for it. It's still somewhat overgrown and strange, with people dropping off tires at the north end in recent years, where a massive pile has been created. If you continue on the road, it takes you through a very questionable stretch of road that's almost gravel, being in very bad condition before getting to Michoud Boulevard, an all-around weird road that slowly takes you into the city. The road almost feels dystopian, with no houses on most of it, passing by the abandoned Six Flags location. It's obvious nobody uses the roadway, allowing it to get into this state of disrepair. It's also possible the exit ramps were recently closed off in the past month or 2, but I'm not sure, and they were open last time I was there in real life. But those are the 3 interchanges, leading to nothing important and forming a very mysterious picture in the eastern region of New Orleans. So now you're probably wondering why these interchanges exist. Well, let's get into that, because it explains a lot about the development of an entire region of the city with it. So turning back the clock to the 1960s, the last decade where New Orleans saw significant growth and development within the city limits. In this time, there was one region that was mostly undeveloped and had a lot of room to work with, the east. Sure, it was very swampy, but that could be dealt with. And it was most importantly open land to build on. So over the course of the 60s and 70s, proposals were made for an upper-class development of the entire eastern region of New Orleans. It would be entirely pre-planned and serve as a richer area on the metro and follow the lines of something like the Woodlands, Texas, or Reston, Virginia. Basically, your average planned suburban community in the U.S. The project had such names as Orlandia, Pontchartrain, and finally New Orleans East, which ended up sticking. As well as that, there were proposals to move the New Orleans International Airport to the east side of town. Now, obviously, the metro is lacking in available land. That's always been a problem. With so many restrictions with the environment, of course, something like an airport, which needs a massive swath of land to be built, would have trouble in this metro. So when there was land open for development in the east, a new, larger airport built on a man-made island in the Bayou Sauvage was an immediate thought. So at this point, nobody really knew what was going to be built in the available land. They just knew there was going to be something soon. Because of this, investors started to jump on the idea of it all, building smaller subdivisions expanding east to the industrial canal. The city, seeing all the excitement and anticipation of growth in the eastern part of the city, decided to build 3 new interchanges on I-10. This would put them ahead infrastructurally and make it less of a worry in the future. After all, if an airport was being built there, they best believe there's going to be a lot of traffic, and interchanges were needed. But sadly, there's a problem with all of this. The vision of new development and large-scale growth came during a large oil boom, where the city was in a very good economic state. But in the 1980s, that all changed. The oil bust of 1986 brought a change in demographics to the area. New Orleans' growing African-American middle class began moving to the east side of town in droves, and significant poverty was introduced to the region as well, with new lower-end apartment complexes being built to accommodate this new growth. The idea of an upper-class suburban community was a thing of the past, and the city just needed to work with what they had. The idea of a full-scale development in East New Orleans faded, and instead the city chose the path of creating the Bayou Sauvage Wildlife Refuge. This meant there was no need for our 3 ghost interchanges, and the 2 that had no real connection to the city were slowly abandoned. The first, closest to Slidell, was open until Hurricane Katrina, with it being a nice place for views of Bayou Sauvage. But the middle one was never in use as far as I'm aware. I think it's incredibly interesting to see the remnants of this failed super project in the city. Michoud Boulevard is a great example, obviously, having a very eerie feel through its entirety. There's also the abandoned Six Flags Parkway, which doesn't even serve as a road anymore. And then there's the very strange Dwyer Road, located still east of the Industrial Canal, which gets weirder and weirder the further east you travel. Going from a weird, empty road to a divided boulevard, still strange and empty as it passes over I-510 and ends abruptly before connecting to the service road. All of these roads are just ways to look back on the history of the city. Present day, hurricanes have made the idea of developing this land impossible, and New Orleans has expanded about as far east as it ever will. The city still looks to fight problems with its geography, and it will be incredibly interesting to see how it develops over the coming decades. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week: Bryson, Sturfels, Karen Hudson 81, Jerome McCall, Dominic Psyche, Rosebud 4, KMS 162, Jeremy Jarvis, Boss King Inc., Christopher DeAngelis, JL, Darkbird, Elijah Pass, Big Pasty, Jeremy Crone, Wolflink 73, Snyder Schwein, Florida Jake, Stormy Knight, Nikita Martinoff, Benjamin Whiting, Ryan Devins, and Hazev the Wolf. I appreciate you all so much. You really help out the channel, and every single person that has a membership to the channel is really appreciated. If you want to become a member, the link is down in the description below, as well as the join button next to the subscribe button. It's just an extra little thing to give to me if you appreciate the content and want to support me as a person. All of it goes into my savings, so you know you're just helping me out if you appreciate the content. Thank you.